What up, though? Welcome to Ray Covery, the meeting after the meeting. So, I don't know, we talked about a lot of different things today, but it was a couple of things that was like standing out to me and a couple of things that was on my mind. One of the things was the principles, the spiritual principles behind the steps, the principles behind the steps. I'm talking about stuff like honesty, open-mindedness, willingness. The first three that they teach us about. But then you got some courage and some love and some perseverance and some service, and some trust. You got all these spiritual principles that's behind the steps, which, ultimately is the recovering process, practicing these spiritual principles in all our affairs. I also want to talk about prayer, you know. So, yeah, in early recovery, it was like I had went through so much pain, and the struggle was for real, for real, for real, for real, for real. The struggle was real, and I was willing to do anything and everything to get better so I wouldn't have to deal with this pain anymore, and I really could start recovering. So, like I said, and I'm guilty because I don't nearly do as much stuff as I used to in early recovery. It was like I was doing recovery all day, every day. Church, I was always in church. Sundays, I was in church like all day. I would get to church probably around 6:30, 7 o'clock, and I would drink coffee, and I would go to the 8 o'clock service, and 8 o'clock service was over with, and my church I attended, they had breakfast, so I would eat breakfast there, and and fellowship with other believers, and then the 11 o'clock service would start, and I would attend that service, and I would attend Sunday school, and we would have lunch after church was over, and on a Sunday I was anywhere up there from about 6:30 to at the latest probably 4:30, on a Sunday. Then I had Wednesday night Bible study, and sometimes I would stay because we had choir rehearsal on that day too. I can't sing and I wasn't in the choir, but sometimes I would stay because I get fed spiritually through the music as well. So a lot of times I would stay after Sunday's Wednesday night Bible study and stay for choir practice as well. And then on Saturdays, I would clean up the church anywhere from an hour to 2 hours. So it was like I was always in church. And when I wasn't in church, I was in some type of recovery 12-step meeting, and I usually would start my morning off, and I was in treatment, y'all. So and they had all these different groups and activities you can do that was geared around recovery. So like first thing in the morning, I would get up and we would have this AM group, and talking about meditating, and just meditating and getting our day started on some recovery and some prayer. Then I usually would go to work, and then at lunchtime I would go to the 12 o'clock meeting. Then we had, I think it was on Wednesdays, we had this thing called Real Talk Recovery, and it was held like a 12-step meeting, but the only thing different is that we could talk about Jesus Christ in this meeting, or the God of our understanding. It was, and we played music in there. We played some type of inspirational and spiritual music, and I really, really enjoyed and liked that meeting a lot. And a lot of the groups that I facilitate at work, I base them off that particular group. I used to go to a meeting called ex-offenders, for people who have been incarcerated before. I would attend those meetings. So yeah, I was always in some type of recovery meeting, and prayer. my mind, my spirit, my body was always on Jesus. I would think about Jesus all day, every day. I would be praying all day, every day. Um, I was like holier than thou. Like if you wasn't talking about, Jesus or something spiritual, like I really ain't want to hear it. And that's just where I was at in early recovery. And, that set down the foundation, for me to be where I'm at today. Like I really, really had to go through that process. Um, so I done strayed away from that a lot. But I'm in the meeting and I'm thinking, 'cause we start talking about prayer, and I was like, Dad, like I don't even pray that much no more. Like I can't remember the last time I prayed. And then right when the meeting was over, we stood up to pray, and I was like, I pray at least twice a day, because I go to a meeting every day, and we say a prayer before the meeting starts, and we say a prayer when the meeting is over. But I still was saying like, but that ain't the same with having that on my own personal relationship with God. Saying my own little personal prayers, and and not really asking for stuff, but praying for others. That's how I like to do my prayers. Like I like to pray for others. So we started talking about the steps, in particular the first 3 steps. And I'm a person who has never really fully worked the steps, and let me tell you why. So I remember hearing somebody talk about, it's really not about the steps. It's about the spiritual principles that's behind the steps. So when I heard that, like a light bulb went off, and I was like, why work the steps and I could just practice the spiritual principles, And remember, I told y'all, like I was in church a lot, and I went to meetings a lot of different kind of meetings, and going to church and going to all these different meetings, I was hearing these same spiritual principles, and I was getting this different perspectives on these spiritual principles and how to ingrain these spiritual principles in my spirit, right? So I was like, why do I need to work the steps? And because I'm learning how to practice the spiritual principles in all my affairs. So I took what I learned in the NA and AA meetings. I took what I learned in the Real Talk Recovery meetings. I took what I learned in the meditation meetings. I took what I learned in, Wednesday night Bible school and Sunday school and AM service and afternoon service. And I started, and from reading the Bible, I really started looking strictly for the spiritual principles and how they coincided with each one of these groups I was going to, and how I could apply them to my life. So that's why I don't work steps. Do I practice spiritual principles in all my affairs? Yeah, I like to think so. So that's my take on, prayer and practicing spiritual principles. I never said this before, but I know, like, it always pops up, subscribe and like my page. So I'm going to ask, like, please, 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 subscribe. If you like what you see, like it, leave a comment. If you don't like what you hearing or seeing, give me a thumbs down, leave a comment why. Maybe I can change some things around. If you feel like you don't believe in some of the beliefs that I believe in, and you got some suggestions for me on how to better work my program of recovery, by all means, like, let a brother know, So subscribe, like, dislike, however you feel, and this recovery. Deuces.